Guys, it's gonna be some time until I get a sew-in again. Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. If you are new here, hi, my name is KAIZEN TSHEGO, and if you're an oldie but a goodie, hey girl, hey. So today I want to have a sit down chit chat with you and talk about my latest sew-in experience. Number one, because I think it was incredibly interesting, but also because you guys asked for it in the previous video. If you don't know which video I'm referring to, I'm going to link it over here for you to have a look at in the card above. And that video was essentially my first wash day after taking my 3-month hiatus, almost 3-month hiatus. But we're back now, and we're back with another video, and you guys wanted to unpack sew-ins, so let's get into it. So when it comes to the topic of sew-ins, right, what's important to note is that my experience is not going to be your experience, but I think because they actually are coming back after a while of dying down and like wigs taking over, it's kind of important for us to circle back to the reason why we moved on from sew-ins and see if the reasons that we moved on from them are still valid now as they were in the past when we left them and progressed to wigs and everything else. I think also because of the nature of the channel that I have, it's important to kind of unpack the whole concept of sew-ins a bit more holistically. But I think the first thing that I'd like us to get into is the situation. What resulted in me getting a sew-in? What was happening? Why did I choose a sew-in? If you follow me on Instagram, you should follow me on Instagram. You should know that I recently had a girls trip with some of my friends, some of your faves that you would have seen on the trip. And we went to Croatia, primarily Dubrovnik. And I was inspired firstly by Gamu. I was going for this look over here. So obviously step number one is finding hair. Step number two is finding someone who's actually going to do the sewing for you. After a few months, I landed on an individual who sold hair, which I believed was good quality hair, and then I went to my salon. But I think if you break down the cost of what you're getting and for how long you can wear it for, I don't think that the sew-in ROI makes sense. So that's the first thing for me, right? It's the price of it for how long, the duration you can wear it for. You get a sew-in done. Granted, it's quicker than getting braids in, I think, or even might be on par depending on the thickness of the braids and the style. But I was in the salon for around 3.5–4 hours from beginning to end, right? And you have to do the relaxer, wash your hair, braid your hair, then they sew in the tracks. So that was 900 Rand, and then it was 450 for the partial relaxer, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 1350, excluding tip. So that's how much you pay for it. And then I found out you can only keep it in for around 6 weeks, 8 weeks if you're stretching it, but that's gonna ruin your hair. So that's the first thing for me, is the cost ROI doesn't make sense. There are other protective styles that you can do that you can keep in for much longer. I guess where the sew-in might be beneficial is that if the hair is good quality, you can use the hair again. So you aren't paying the initial cost of acquiring the hair, which mind you is also another cost factor. So it's that 1350 plus the actual hair that you have to purchase. That has to be good quality, that has to blend with your hair texture. And yeah, but I'm gonna get there. So we're on the cost one. Cost-wise, it doesn't make sense. So if we're doing that 1350, we're adding on the 3.5, 3.8 that I paid for my bundles, 3 bundles, 24 inches. The math is not mathing, okay? And stay with me. When it comes to practicality, I think if you compare the sew-in to everything else that you can do, it is more high maintenance than everything else that you could do. And when I say everything else that you can do, I'm talking in relation to hairstyles for holidays. So, you know, your braids, a wig, a sew-in. That's basically the category. So when I'm saying that from a practicality perspective, the sew-in loses is because it loses if you are comparing it to a wig that is a glueless wig where you just apply it and you go. But it is winning if you're comparing it to a frontal that you have to lay and set and melt and do all those things, okay? But for me, it was very cumbersome because I needed to travel with a kit because I had decided to do a sew-in where the texture of the hair didn't quite match the texture of my natural hair, which is obviously straight and relaxed. So there was a lot of manipulation that needed to go into that. And obviously I had never done something like that before. I didn't actually think that far. Let me not even tell you what I was thinking. I did not think that far when it came to, okay, this is the texture, what are you gonna do? I only found out when I was at the salon that, oh, now we need to blend the leave out. And also, to make things worse, I wanted 2 parts. So I had a mid part, I had a side part, which I loved, right? And it worked really, really well for those days when the side wasn't quite doing the things, I could do a middle. When the middle wasn't quite doing the things, I could do a side. So I love the versatility of that. And I think that was great. But everything else after that was horrendous, because every day what it essentially meant is I needed to blend the 2 textures. With the leave out, I would straighten the top of everything that showed, and then the rest would be curled. That's how I made the units flat. And then I needed to apply a flexi rod for the curls. With the flexi rods that I used, they were quite thin, like the thinnest ones you can get, but the curl pattern wasn't quite matching the deep wave. And I don't think it would ever with flexi rods. I'm really not sure what would work. Maybe, you know that trick when they have like a rat tail comb and they wind the hair around the rat tail comb and they heat the hair? Maybe something that tight, but you needed a coil that was that tight. And obviously, because your hair is natural and you're wearing bundles that have been chemically treated to get that curl pattern, your curl pattern of your natural hair is going to drop. So by the time the day ends, it shows quite clearly where the weave or the track ends and where your hair begins. And the next one for me is around thinking about what are you going to be doing when you have the sew-in, and is the sew-in conducive to those activities? I do think that there are instances when having a sew-in is more convenient than having a wig, and much better than having braids, in the sense that it's better than having braids because it's versatile. You can curl it, you can style it in different ways, but there are limitations because obviously it's tracked and weft, so you can't really lift it up into a bun. If you work out, that's something to consider, that you're working out with it and you don't take it off. So you do need to wash your hair, or else it's gonna get moldy and stinky and gunky in there when you just work out and you don't wash. So you're gonna need to wash your hair. Let me also give you guys additional context around why practically it just wasn't working out. Dubrovnik, as you can imagine, is a holiday destination that has a really incredible ocean to swim in. You can snorkel, you can canoe, you can kayak, you can do all of those things. And obviously, that's what we were gonna do. So with all of those things considered, in my mind's eye, I said, a sew-in is the one. Knowing I want to snorkel, knowing I want to swim in the ocean, salty water ocean, I decided I'm going with the sew-in. So I honestly don't think, with that considered as well, that I set this hairstyle up for success by choosing it considering the holiday I was going on. Every time I got into water, I needed to wash my hair because the salt was going to dry out my hair if I left it. Just like when you swim in a pool with the chlorine, you need to wash your hair. So there was no way of getting around that. Every single day I was in water, which was almost every day, I needed to be washing my hair. And I think that leads to the next point, right? Which was the deterioration that I experienced with the bundles. Mind you, I didn't even make it to the 6-week mark, and this is why. I'm in a position now where I'm still wondering, did the vendor not give me good quality bundles, or did I just put my hair through the ringer? So I had an incredibly bad experience with the bundles that I bought. And my expectation is, when you're parting with that kind of money, I know it's not a lot in the bigger scheme of how much people are paying out there, so please don't get me wrong, but it's also not the cheapest bundles that you can get. I think it's like a mid-level, you know. I would have expected them to last a bit longer and to perform a bit better, and I found that towards the end of my trip they were incredibly dry, and I needed to manipulate the hair like I had natural hair. So I had to spray the hair down. I traveled with my spray bottle. I needed to put leave-in conditioner. I needed to put in mousse or gel that would encourage the curls. I needed to do twists and also blend with my leave out. It really just was a lot to do, and I don't know if I was being fussy because it's me, or if I was being fussy because just the hair was not great for the situation, but also just in general, the hair quality was not good. The next thing that I don't enjoy about sew-ins is the fact that you need to relax your leave out, I feel like that ends up creating inconsistency with your relaxer. Like with me as an example, I had a mid part and I had a side part, and I relaxed those two parts. When I've been washing my hair and treating my hair outside of the sew-in, what I realized is that obviously now there's two different textures. So when I go and I get my relaxer touch-up, I'm currently at the four month mark. I want to stretch it out maybe to 5-6 months. When I go then, what's going to happen when my hair gets relaxed? I feel like the mid part and the side part, which I relaxed outside of relaxing the rest of my head, is going to get over processed, and that's my concern and something that maybe you want to think about. The next thing that you need to consider about sew-ins is accessibility to your hair. I think I've mentioned it in previous videos around how it's important to ensure that when you have your protective style, you can still take care of your actual hair, because that's what you're left with when the protective style needs to go. So I found my actual hair a bit tricky to access when I had a sew-in. I could care for it, yes, but it was very limited, because obviously it was in tracks, then there were wefts, and some areas, because it's sewn together, you can't actually get to. So there are quite a few limitations with caring for your actual hair with the sew-in. With all of this said, I do know that there might be people who might be wanting to get sew-ins and gravitating towards the idea. Would I ever get a sew-in in the future? For me, the answer is actually yes. I would get a sew-in again, and if I was to get it again, I would make the following changes. I would stick to one part so that there is limited damage or impact to my hair. So I'd either do a mid part or I'd either commit to a side part, and that would be it. Secondly, I would try and investigate and get a texture that aligns to my natural texture as much as possible. And that basically maybe means exploring the kinkier texture that mimics relaxed hair. I think I'd also have to make the consideration for gym and ensure that the quality of the bundles can endure multiple wash days, because I do like to wash my hair every week, and that is something that I'd like for that for the hair that I'm using to be able to do for me. With all of those things considered, I think maybe I would circle back to sew-ins, but for now I'm okay. I just need to recover because it was a lot. It really was a lot. If you're wondering what else we do on this channel, we have some really incredible playlists around hair, around product reviews. The playlist that a lot of the individuals who watch my channel really gravitate towards is my wash day playlist. So I'm gonna leave that here for you while you contemplate whether or not you're gonna get a sew-in. I hope that you enjoy the playlist and it keeps you company until our next video. Thank you so much for joining me today. Ciao for now. Love you, bye.